Okay. Ita Mexico. Good day. It is late afternoon on Saturn Day, the 23rd of August, 2025. I can't believe how fast this year is passing by and this season. We are just entering the 6th of our 6 summer moons, our last moon. Awakat Siki Sum, the deer moon. And so it's one lunar cycle before we're heading into our winter. Out here today at the Alexander Wilderness Park. Got a couple things to talk about and something to do. My main goal out here today is to pick some cough medicine. Do you know what that is? It's milkweed. Is there? Oh yeah. Well, it's a bird, which is odd that it hasn't flown away. Oh fuck! Holy fuck! There we go. A pheasant. I took a little spill. Female pheasant. Yeah, I want to get some cough medicine, and there's 2 parts to the cough medicine I intend to gather. One part that I'm gonna gather here, another part that I'll most likely get elsewhere. The part that I'm gonna get elsewhere are these yellow flowers that you see along the way here. If you touch them, especially the back of the flower, it's sticky. It's really sticky. It's called gumweed in English. The common name is gumweed. And similarly, in Blackfoot language, it's called oxbee, which is to be sticky like that. Like I can feel the residue on my fingers. Not picking this because, right here, because first of all, it grows very abundantly, and because it's a native plant, we're not supposed to be harvesting them in the coulee parks here in Lethbridge. Not to say that I never do harvest native plants from the coulee park, but I want to talk a little bit today actually about this native and non-native when it comes to plants and animals and this kind of thing. It was curious this morning. Somebody had posted a picture of the other ingredient that I need for my cough medicine, which is a plant in English called mullein or mullein. People pronounce it different ways. Mullein. And somebody posted a picture of that in the Native Plants of Alberta group. And just looking for an identification, which I see all the time in different naturalist groups on social media and stuff. Somebody will post a picture of a plant asking for an identification, and some people will just give the identification. Others inevitably use the opportunity as a kind of recruitment tool into a strange kind of environmental ethics that I want to discuss. And by that I mean, in this instance, they said mullein is a noxious weed in Alberta, and this kind of a thing. We got to get rid of it. And I asked them, without looking on Google or asking ChatGPT or anything, how do you find noxious and like weed? And what is this language about? Are plants who've come here and naturalized into the ecology, are they all noxious? Are they all invasive? I can tell you they aren't, unless they happen to rub industrial agriculture the wrong way. And it's primarily agriculture in partnership with science that defines which plants we should hate and which we shouldn't. And it's not necessarily based on what they're doing out here in the environment, but on a narrative spun by the industry that is hurt by the presence of these plants. But anyway, we're going to talk about all that stuff as we go along here. But we are entering into the last summer moon. I'm sad to see my season going. Rattlesnake babies are out already, which means it won't be long till everybody's moving back toward the dens. This morning, out on my morning dog walk, I ran into a leopard frog. And it's interesting, I didn't grow up here. I moved here in the late 1990s, and I've been a naturalist though, since I was 12 years old. And so as soon as I moved here, I started spending a lot of time in the coulees, learning the plants and animals that are here in my then new environment, and really paying attention and studying and getting out and looking, turning over logs and seeing who's here, And I never saw any leopard frogs until maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I started seeing leopard frogs. The first one I saw was when I was trapping beavers in the oxbow that brings water in to the city's water intake canal. I mean, it is the city's water intake canal, that oxbow, but basically the water really slows down there because it's an oxbow, and that was a good environment for these leopard frogs. And so I started seeing leopard frogs there, and then since then I've saw them at the oxbow underneath Ridgewood subdivision. I would say it's like the storm drain below Ridgewood, where there's some beaver works. And I've seen leopard frogs at Spokane now, which I know there wasn't for the longest time that I was studying there, and I paid very close attention to what was going on at the pond. Never saw leopard frog until recently. So in my experience, which is only pretty short term here, leopard frogs have been very rare, and I'm seeing them more often. So I have a reason to believe, because I'm seeing them, that the population of leopard frogs is increasing here. However, people who've lived here all their life and are as old, if not older than me, have told me that when they were kids growing up here, there were lots of leopard frogs. And then in recent years, there haven't been leopard frogs. And now it seems that the leopard frogs are returning, although, people who were here growing up as kids are saying, yeah, I see them now. Might spot 1 or 2 a year, which is about what I myself see, but nothing like the hundreds that they used to see in the summer. So the thing about leopard frogs, like we got several different amphibian species here. We got leopard frogs, northern leopard frogs, we got boreal chorus frog, we've got the spadefoot toad, we've got the tiger salamander, and most of those amphibians are largely terrestrial. It's only the northern leopard frog that is very kind of aquatic bound, and it's one of the true frogs. Like the chorus frog, I guess, is kind of a tree frog. Spadefoot toad is a desert toad. It's basically adapted specifically to live, you know, terrestrially. They only pop up very briefly during certain storms of the year when we got puddles that are going to be there just big enough for them to host tadpoles for the brief amount of time those toads need. But the leopard frog, being a true frog, it has a very thin skin. In fact, it can get its oxygen. It doesn't have to breathe air through its mouth or nose. It can breathe right through its skin, and it can breathe oxygen right out of the water. And so, like, unlike the other amphibians who winter here, the leopard frog winters under the water, and they require kind of a sediment-rich environment in their aquatic area. So like oxbows are very good for them, because when they go to winter, they dig under the sediment just a little bit. Most of their body is under the sediment, but a little bit of their back and stuff will be exposed, and that's how they'll get their oxygen while they're doing their hibernation in the winter, through that exposure to the water. So they need that kind of sediment stuff. And so it's not surprising to find them in oxbows where things are slowed down and the sediment comes.
Time 16 minutes 5 seconds. Total distance 1.0 kilometers. Average pace 16 minutes 5 seconds per kilometer. Split pace 16 minutes 5 seconds per kilometer.
Yeah, so it's not surprising to find them in oxbows. Today, the one that I found was right along the river, and he was about like 6 or 7 meters from the water's edge, hopping around on the shore, nowhere near any oxbows. So that surprised me. It got me thinking, you know, I wonder if because our rivers, the Old Man River here, for the past several years hasn't had good floods and this kind of thing, hasn't had a lot of rapid waters, and it seems to be the water table has been sinking. I wonder if the shallower waters are creating more sediment-rich environments, even in the river, that host the frogs. In fact, I do definitely see along some stretches of the river a lot more aquatic plants, beds of aquatic plants that I didn't used to see. Okay, so having a thin skin, as the leopard frog has, it also makes it very vulnerable to different toxins in the environment. If the water's toxic, it's going to permeate their skin. It's going to affect the frogs. It's not going to be good. Oh, look at that deer across the way. You probably can't see them. I'm just using my iPhone. So you can see like a lot of, I don't know if it's milfoil or what is growing in the river here, but there's quite a bit, you know, up close to the shore. So what caused the leopard frogs to vacate? What is causing them to return? Oh, his sunglasses. Okay, I'll record you. Here, I can push. Behind a tree. I don't know. Behind that log. Binoculars. What caused them originally to leave? What is causing them to come back? It's a big question. Okay, you know, there's a lot of environmental factors that may be at play. There's also conservation efforts. This frog is threatened in Alberta, and so there have been some conservation efforts. Closest place, I believe, is McGrath. In the early 2000s, there were releases of northern leopard frogs in McGrath. Must have been along the St. Mary's River area that feeds into Lethbridge at the confluence there, Cottonwood Park. As far as insects and stuff, like, you know, it could be that there's more food now, but I doubt that, because Lethbridge has a insect treatment program that has taken away so many mosquitoes and such that a lot of the birds that used to nest here don't nest along the river so much anymore. Like, I barely see any bank swallows. Used to be thousands of them. Barely see any cliff swallows. There's not even too many tree swallows, all of whom, you know, depend on those mosquitoes and small flying insects and stuff. I don't see western kingbirds in the riparian forest anymore like I used to in Lethbridge. You know, so I don't think it's a food source issue that's bringing back, well, that, you know, can't say, but I suspect it's either something with the sediment in the river, with the absence of predators, or with protection from predators due to aquatic plant growth. It could be, you know, a cleaner environment, a cleaner river that's bringing them back. I don't know, but there's a lot of different things that might be involved, and they're all worth considering and talking about and thinking about, and, you know, studying if you have the resources to do that, if you can get research dollars and do something. But I need to go back in here in the forest to grab some plants. I don't know if it's pretty off prairie. There's a bench up there. I'll meet you up at that bench. There's a lot of things to consider for why these frogs might be bouncing back, and other things that are going on in the environment all the time. The environment changes, and this is where I want to ask, like, the people who consider themselves naturalists, who are out to kill, annihilate certain supposedly invasive and noxious plant and animal species. I want to ask them, where is that cutoff for appropriate change? You know, I mean, like, if something's native or non-native, how do we define that? Is it whether or not the plant was here at the time of European contact? Is it whether or not the plant was something introduced through contact between North America and other places? Because then you'd have to consider a lot of plants and animals, including the ones most people call native. You'd have to consider some of them to be you know, quite invasive and successful, and having been successful for a while now. All right, I'm going to flip the camera around for a second here and show you what I'm after. This is the patch of mullein that I've been harvesting from in recent years. You can see it grows on a gravel bed. It was probably produced in a river flood, but none of the cottonwoods or anything, or poplars, or other plants so much, except for maybe some of the absinthe, which is another introduced plant. Nothing wants to grow on this rock, but the mullein is doing very good. This is a basal floret of mullein leaves, and this is the mature mullein plant, just about flowered. These ones, most of them right now are flowering. I don't know if these flowers are played out, or if I feel like they haven't totally popped yet, these ones. Lots of different insects visit these flowers when they are popped and up. I've seen several ants and wasp species in particular, but different flies visit them, different bees visit them. Moths and butterflies visit them. I think these flowers, they may have been played out already. Look at this, they look dry and old, so I might be too late to show you the pollinators. But there are a host of pollinators for these plants. Bumblebees visit them. A lot of native bees. And that's something to consider too. If we're going to talk about this native, non-native distinction of what's good and what's bad, what about the European honeybee? I wonder why industrial agriculture isn't going after that species, because it's larger than the native bees. It outcompetes them. To what extent there is competition. I think the whole discourse of interspecies competition is a little bit blown up too. It's a little bit of an anthropomorphization of the reality of plants. These flowers these leaves from the non-flowering basal bosettes, or basal, what do they call it? Not bosette, but basal, oh shit, I'm losing my language. Anyway, these young leaves from plants that don't have flower stems is kind of what I want for the cough medicine, okay? And it's cool to pick these anywhere in the Lethbridge coulees, because this is an evildoer plant that's so bad and it needs to be vanquished. Maybe you can get yourself a vanquisher badge if you're willing to. Probably not. I think you have to go after Russian olive for that this year, but you can get your merit badge in one way or another if you're willing to fight nature. Look at these. This is beautiful. Beautiful. I just take a couple of leaves, and you know, some people might be asking, oh, why is he picking plants he didn't leave an offering? It's not proper protocol. And it's not exactly true. I am making an offering right now in the shape of this video, which I'm trying to use to call people's attention to how it's kind of ridiculous, counterproductive. You know, you can't fight nature, right? You can't fight nature. So if we're going to try to control a certain plant, that is doing better in the ecology than we are, that's fitting in better than we are, you know, what are we doing? Like, I don't know of any, I know I know a lot of the traditional Blackfoot stories, but I don't know a single one in which a newly introduced plant or animal is persecuted, hated, called out as in need of destruction. In fact, it's the opposite in traditional stories. When a new plant or animal comes into the environment, people are in a way scampering to get knowledge from that plant about how we can potentially interact with it, maybe benefit from it, maybe utilize it in some way. This is how tobacco came in, or, you know, when domestic horses came around, or, you know, there's instances where these plants and animals introduced in the old stories, and what happens is people go to them looking for gifts, knowledge gifts, because, you know, in the indigenous paradigm, I'll call it, or in Blackfoot, Nitsitapiskskataksin. Hold on, I'm gonna flip that camera around again. Maybe, oh, wait a second, maybe grab just a couple of more here. I've grabbed a good amount, but for right now, I'm also gonna find some tomorrow at Pavan Park. It's another little pocket of plants like this, but they're definitely not like taking over the riparian environment. Like, if you look around the whole way we've been walking to come in here, kilometer and more, and everywhere basically outside of what we just saw along the river here, this plant is not here, because I think the native plants are out competing it. Hold on.
You got mad when I took you out. Can you get in? Yeah? I'm not leaving you.
Yeah, let's continue our walk, babe. Mr. Ilya.
Yeah.
All right, we're back and we've caught up with Des. I guess the message that I'm trying to share is that there needs to be a little bit more balance at the very least, if not a perspective change on how to relate with other species in our environment. Like, it's curious to me why, like, well, not curious to me, I understand it, really, I think, but the species that are vilified the most are also the ones that are fairly synanthropic with the current mainstream culture, meaning that they are the ones that are living close to humans and close to what we're doing, because we're benefiting from conditions that they favor. Like with the mullein, it grows in very disturbed areas. Like you saw that rock bed, nothing else is growing there. Mullein will grow there, but that also happens when we clear ground for agriculture, right? Then mullein can move in, and that's really why we hate it, not because it's overtaking this environment. Look around. Is there any out here? There's that little patch, that one little patch, and as long as I've been visiting here to this park, years. Just that little patch. You know, where's the invasion? They're not spreading, they just got a camp. And those species that we're closest to, you know, including animal species like raccoons and crawdads, you know, certain fish species, certain snails, different shellfish, and what else is kind of vilified? Anyway, there's a whole list. I might someday do some kind of a humorous little pamphlet on the bad guys of our ecology out here. But it's all the bad guys are all species who live very, very close to us. And that's why they're bad guys, because the agricultural industry sees them as parasites or noxious. I don't know what the difference is, but parasitic, and you know, I don't know to what extent. I don't even know why we want to look at it with that lens, eh? Like in the
Time 47 minutes 36 seconds. Total distance 2.0 kilometers. Average pace 23 minutes 47 seconds per kilometer. Split pace 31 minutes 30 seconds per kilometer.
Are you stuck? You can do it, Ilya. In my training in the Blackfoot system, beavers are the model of how to live properly within the eco-social network. They're the model because whatever they do in life, in their life, which is serving their purposes, also tends to host a lot of other species. In fact, thousands of other species, such that beavers are even more, they're not even a keystone species, they're more than that. Without the beavers, this riparian environment is fucked. Their life is totally integrated with the health of this ecology. Is it too rough? It's a little rough. So, you know, they're the model of how to be. And if we were to look at that model and say, how are we doing? You know, we're not doing that great. Like, there's not a whole lot of species that rely on us, and the ones that do, we consider to be noxious, invasive, bad things that we're at war with. When, if we were approaching it from a different angle, we'd be trying to learn what those species have to offer us, right? And that's what I'm suggesting is a better approach. Instead of this whole war trope that we're using, and this native, non-native, invasive species discourse, this narrative, I think that's ridiculous. Nature always changes, just like the frogs, you know. To me, the leopard frog coming, you know, that I'm seeing more leopard frogs, to me indicates, you know, that there's something changing, and could be good, could be, I don't know if you want to label good things good and bad, but there's a lot of different factors involved. But I don't have the whole perspective because I've only lived here for so long, and people that have lived here longer than me remember seeing a lot more frogs here, and that helps us understand a little bit more, maybe, what's going on. And you know, the more that we are not at war, but in some kind of love with the other species in our environment, the more we're going to actually benefit and learn from them. I don't know what the war thing does productively. People out here killing the different so-called invasive plants and stuff. I've yet to see a plant out here in the coulee, any species that's taken over from the native plants. And so to me, like every time, and I offend people on these online forums, because I would say 98, if not 100% of the time that somebody asks the identification of a non-native species on a forum of naturalists or birders or plant people or what have you, mushroom people, whatever it is, 98 to 100% of the time when somebody posts looking for identification of a species that was here, a species that the agricultural industry has put on the hate list, instead of just offering the identification that people ask for, they're given this value statement that this is a bad plant, it's noxious, it's invasive, all of this language, it's a weed, you know, it's a plant. It's a successful plant is what it is. Sorry. I can't help but respond to that stuff. And when I do, people take offense because they've got so much of their naturalist identity wrapped up in it. And I think I wish there was a community of people whose naturalist identity didn't go in that direction. But I can't find that community. Even among native people now, because the popular culture is so inundating that everybody is a steward of the land now, which is not a traditional role of human beings at all. But anyway, we'll just continue our walk, and if we see anything else apolitical to point out along the way, I'll do so. That's mostly what I want to share. By the way, if you go out and you get gumweed and you get simoleon, if you're looking for an exact recipe of how much of each to throw in what kind of water in the tea to make the cough medicine, I don't have an exact measurement for you. I basically put enough in there, maybe like a handful of each, into a good pot of water, and make a nice thick brew if I'm really sick, want to stop a cough. But I don't have a actual measurement for that. You just play it by ear, really. But the stuff works. Okay, so if you want cough medicine, this is for the winter. This is the time to grab it. Sneeze weed, which I showed on my last video, is pretty much played out now. So these are the last flowers of summer. We're coming to the end.